Hello, welcome to my Havoc Demon Hunter guide. This guide is targeted specifically towards Night Fae Havoc Demon Hunters. Um, so if you are not a Night Fae, you can just skip the parts about where I talk about Soulbinds and tricks for Night Faes. So in this video, I'll be going through like Soulbind choices, conduit choices, tricks you can do with Night Fae abilities, uh, followed by talents, rotations, and a short demo of how the rotation will work. So, yep, let's get to it. So for Soulbind choices, you definitely want to go with Corinne. For Mythic Plus, it's by far the best Soulbind. Wahan Tactics gives you 10% increased damage done to when you hit something that's above 75% health. So for Havoc Demon Hunters, our damage profile is mainly front-loaded burst. So this works greatly with that damage profile. From here, you want to go into this potency conduit slot. Growing Inferno is our best damaging potency, and then for finesse conduits, you generally just want to take the Fire Haze. Gives you more speed after your fail rush. The rest are not really that useful in Mythic Plus content. And then you can go into either one of these. This one makes your weapons take no durability damage, so you save a bit of gold on repair costs. This one gives everyone in your party mounted movement speed. Might have some users, but generally it's not very significant. So I usually just go with sharpening techniques, and then go down into this double endurance conduit. So Fell Defender, it's a very powerful conduit. Reduces the cooldown of your blur. No, depending on the item level of your conduit. So at 213 it reduces by 10 seconds. So yeah, 50-second cooldown damage reduction cooldown is very powerful. And then after that you go into Viscous Ink. It's just a passive extra magic damage reduction. And lastly, you want to go with the first strike ability. So how this works is whenever you hit a target before you take any damage from that target, you get 25% crit buff for 5 seconds. So yeah, this is very powerful tool in your kit, and learning how to manage this buff and tracking the buff uptime, it's very essential to do a lot of damage. So I suggest that you get a weak aura or some kind of way to track this buff, because learning how to use it and manage it is actually quite important to doing damage. Okay, so Night Fae tips, tricks you can do. Not really much tricks you can do with Night Fae, but generally two things you can do here. It's to know how to try and get a refresh of an AoE pack. So let's say you creep near the pack, right? And you with your immolation aura on, you only want to hit one or two of the time, like not the whole pack. You want to try to not hit something else, like leave one target untouched, so you can get a refresh later on in. So like if you see here, I have this first strike buff, and then when I move into and hit the other pack, the other targets, I get a refresh on the first strike. So that gives me like an extended crit buff in a way. So it it's very useful in, especially for spiteful weeks. So let's assume that this is the target, main target that you're hitting, right? And then let's say this is a spiteful target that is chasing your healer or your range DPS, and then you can throw a glaive toss and you get buff. So another thing, it's useful to have a mouse over macro on your throw glaive, so you can do it without switching target. So like here, you keep hitting this guy, your buff is finishing, the spiteful comes out, do that, refresh your first strike buff. Easy 25% crit for 5 seconds. Huge DPS boost. Yeah, and also on spiteful weeks, if you do, that's why I like to take this on spiteful weeks. It not only gives me like easy refreshes on the first strike buff, it also slows the spitefuls. And there's actually not a lot of dungeons for this season that need a single target stun. So you could get away with running Master of the Glaive, especially on most weeks actually. But it's something that's nice to have. It's very useful on like Plague 4 for that stupid spider that spawns the stealth links. Yeah, but spiteful for sure. I'll go with Master of the Glaive just for the first strike and to help slow the spiteful targets. And okay, another trick which actually it's with is relating to the hunt. So okay, I'm sure if you should know what the hunt does. So it's a 50-yard charge. So anything that you pass through will get a dot put on them. So normally if the pack is in this orientation, or maybe I should do it. Okay, never mind, they're too far apart. So if the pack is in this orientation and you are standing here, okay, you want to charge that one because you will pass through all this. You will pass through the other three, and then all this will get dot placed on them, right? So if you look at it this way, you can see all of them are getting the dot. Okay, but one thing that uh a lot of people do not know with the hunt is that you don't necessarily need to charge through them to get the dot have the dot placed on them. Because there is like maybe 1 second or slightly less window that you have after using the hunt that whoever you pass by will also will get the dot in a way. So it's like you become this like a charge blade in a way. So you can how it works is that I can hunt to this target and then I walk across this field after I charge to this guy. And obviously these people won't get the dot right because I didn't charge through them. But after I charge through them, I charge to this target, I can walk across to this, just walk over them and they will get the dot placed on them. Or I can like hunt to this guy, fair rush across, or even blade dance over them, and then they will all still get the dot placed on them. Yeah. So the window is quite select. I'm not sure whether this is far enough to do it. Yeah, I'll show you the normal one, which is just walking over them on this target dummies first. So I'm gonna hunt to this guy. See? Okay, this guy was close enough that he got the splash. But if you notice, these two didn't get it at first. And then when I walk over them, they got the dot placed on them. So that is one thing you can do with the hunt. Okay, this is not being charged. Okay, I'll show you. Maybe I'll show you at Covenant Dummies. If like there's two targets spread apart, but they are like within your fair rush range, you can still do it. Like you hunt to one of them and then you fair rush to the other one. It will still put the dot on the guy if you're fast enough. Okay. And yeah, same thing applies for like blade dance because blade dance is essentially just like it's like as good as like walking over the target, right? So I'm gonna try to hunt this guy and then fair rush over to this guy. And that should put the dot on both of them. If you just watch over the nameplates, you should see the dot happening. Russia. There you go. See, both of them get the dot, even though they are like spread out. So that's one cool thing that you can do with your brush. Okay, so the last one I wanted to show was the hunt and blade dance over these mobs. See? Yeah, it's kind of slow. So you see, I didn't actually make it all the way to this mob, but we managed to put a dot on that one. Yeah, so if they are all like sort of clumped together, and if you uh, so it's quite useful in a sense that in the Mythic Plus dungeons, right, usually the ads are all clumped together, and sometimes when you try to tap target through the ads, uh, like for example, let's say this two, right? So if you are standing here, you obviously want to hunt on this guy. But let's say if there's quite a number of ads here, sometimes you accidentally target the wrong one. So it gives you like a second to correct your mistake in a way. So if you were to hunt on this guy, it automatically puts the dot here because you will go through this mob while you're charging, right? Yeah. So if you accidentally hunt to the wrong one, you can just like walk over to the next one, or you can blade dance across the ads um to reapply your dots. So yeah, that's usually the scenario that I come across with on my runs, especially when there's multiple packs being put together. It gets kind of messy to target the correct one to pick. Or sometimes you might just waste time trying to target the correct one. So in this way, you can like sort of just save time. Like, okay, I don't bother to tap target or try to click on that one. I can just hunt on this one, and then I just walk over to the yeah. Yeah, so that's one of the tricks for applying the hunt if you accidentally charge the wrong target. Okay, so for choice of legendaries, you want to go with Collective Anguish. This is the one that summons another Demon Hunter to fell devastation your targets that you I beam. This just gives you nice consistent TPS output whenever you I beam, and extra healing on it is actually nice as well. Uh, Alternatively, you can run Darkland Medallion, but I wouldn't recommend it as it's very RNG. So this one is the one that resets your has a chance to reset the cooldown on your I beam, so you can just I beam over and over again. But again, I said it's not a guaranteed thing, and it's very RNG. Um, if you want, you can also run Burning Wound. I've seen some people run Burning Wound, but I wouldn't recommend it. It makes your rotation very clunky in a way, like not as smooth. But you can run this if you want to. But if you are running like maybe very high keys that or where the targets take a very long time to die, then you can run the Burning Wound legendary. It has a decent DPS output if your targets stay alive long enough, because you can drop the debuff on all your targets, and then all of them take extra damage from your immolation aura. Yeah, but my recommendation would be to run Collective Anguish regardless of the any affix or any dungeon. Just run Collective Anguish. It's very decent for Mythic Plus. Hey, so Demon Hunter rotations. There's two main schools of uh, basically two builds, either demonic or momentum. But I'll go through all the talents that you need to use. So Um, if you are fairly new to a demon hunter, or don't, if you think that you are not very proficient with playing a demon hunter, this is the build I recommend that you go with. Um, this is basically the demonic build. You go blind fury, insatiable hunger. With this, you will you basically can eye beam off one single demonic bite because it generates more fury, and then yeah. So this gives you your how should I say? So with a single demon's bite, you can demon's bite blind fury, and you have a full furry bar instantly. I mean, after you finish the channel, you get a full furry bar, and then you can just unload your DPS from there. And for this talent row, you can either go Glaive Tempest or Unbound Chaos. So Glaive Tempest works best on like 2 to 5 targets cleave. So uh and it if you unless you have like super high mastery, it's better on single target. But otherwise you want to go Unbound Chaos for big AoE, like more than 5 targets. And it also works best on single target, so you get more damage on the boss if you go Unbound Chaos. But Glaive Tempest is actually a lot easier to use because you just whenever it's up, the cooldown is up, you just press and you just use it on cooldown, and then the damage just comes up. So you don't really need to check your positioning. You don't have to do anything else fancy after that. So it is great if your group is like pulling small packs, or usually one pack at a time, or like certain dungeons like maybe TOP. You don't really have that many big packs. Most of them are like 5 or below. So it's great to go Glaive Tempest. Um, Next talent row, soul rending is I'll just go soul rending over netherwalk because it's passive. It gives you a lot of sustain. Netherwalk is sort of a pseudo immunity. It just immunes damage, so it's not very useful, and you can't do any DPS while you're in the netherwalk. So there are niche users, but I don't recommend. I mean, if you're doing super high keys, then maybe. But if you are like new or doing like 15s and below, so I don't recommend using that all. Just go soul rending. Is just a passive effect which gives you a lot of heals. Next row will be Cycle of Hatred. First Blood is either one of these two. So Cycle of Hatred works very well with your the legendaries. It gives you more resets on your I beams. First Blood if you need more single target DPS. But with the demonic build, I would still go Cycle of Hatred for a single target. It's just much nicer to have just to spam Annihilate on whenever you're in demonic form, whenever you're in metamorph form after your I beam. Uh, like- so okay, this is the spec I recommend you go if you are very new to Demon Hunters. And then if you want a bit more AoE damage, you go Unbound Chaos. And this is the demonic spec. So it's either one of these with demonic. Okay, so your rotation for this build, if you're let's assuming you're going with Glaive Tempest, um, what you're going to do is okay. So the rotation for Demon Hunter, it follows a priority system. So okay, this is assuming you're a Night Fae. If you're not Night Fae, you can just ignore the hunt. Whenever I talk about the hunt or first strike windows, you can just ignore those. So priority is always firstly is Immolation Aura, followed by the hunt if you are in your first strike window, Glaive Tempest, followed by I beam, and then the hunt if you are out of first strike window. Blade dance on 3 targets or death sweep on 2 or more targets, and then chaos strike or annihilation, and followed by demon's bite. So if you have nothing to do, just demon's bite to generate fury and chaos strike or annihilate. So one thing to highlight for the night phase out there, um, if you are not in your first strike window, you generally want to I beam before using the hunt, because your any haste that you get will buff the dot that the hunt puts on the targets. So if you are in your first strike window, I prefer to try and get a crit of the hunt, and also the dots will tick inside your first strike window. It's 25% crit, so it's quite a high chance to crit. Usually we should have around maybe 20% crit. So with that buff, you should get about 40, 45. It's quite a high chance to crit. So, okay, so if you are going with this build and Unbound Chaos, the rotation is more or less the same. It's just that your priority will now be, first will always still be Immolation Aura, and then is your Fell Rush with your Unbound Chaos buff. So followed by the hunt in your first strike if you are still in your first strike window. Otherwise you just I beam and then the hunt, and then blade dance or death sweep with 2 or 3 targets. Blade dance on 3 or more targets, death sweep on 2 or more targets, and then followed by chaos strike annihilation to dump excess fury, and demon's bite when you have nothing else to do to generate fury. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the sort of opening rotation for your big AoE burst when you have all your cooldowns up. So you start with Immolation Aura, get your first strike buff, immediately cast the Hunt into a Demon's Bite Glaive Tempest. If you don't have enough fury for I beam, you Demon's Bite I beam. Otherwise, you just I beam into a Blade Dance, Metamorph, Death Sweep into another I beam, and then you continue your normal rotation from there. Okay, so here it goes. Immolation Aura, the Hunt, Demon's Bite, Glaive Tempest, I beam, Blade Dance, Metamorph, Death Sweep into another I beam, and then you continue the rotation from there. So this rotation is fairly simple, just press whichever abilities that come up, and if nothing is up, just use your Chaos Strike when nothing is up. Chaos Strike Demon's Bite when nothing is up. So with usually with this chaos theory, cycle of hatred, I like to pull at least 80 fury before I start the chaos strike. So I can get at least 2 chaos strikes in. It's just a preference thing, type of thing. Yeah. This is pretty simple. So let's say okay, my hand is coming back up. So okay, let me show you. So if you're in the middle of a pack and you don't have your, let's just wait for I beam and the hunt to get back up. If you're in the middle of a pack and you don't have your first strike buff, right, you always want to I beam first before using the hunt. Okay, because the haste buff that you get from any haste buff, actually it boosts the dots. It makes your dots from the hunt do more damage, as in it ticks faster. You get more ticks of it. Yeah, there you go. That's the This is a very simple rotation for the demonic build. For the momentum build, so this is the go-to talent spec for momentum. So you want Fellblade Demon Blade. Fellblade is just a very nice tool to have for on-demand furry, and also to get back to your target after you do a Fell Rush for the momentum buff. And then yeah, Demon Blade just goes very well with Fellblade. And you almost always want Unbound Chaos with momentum. I don't think I will ever use Glaive Tempest. There's just too much synergy in these two talents. And yeah, Soul Rending still here, still my preferred choice. Netherwalk if you want the immunity for certain reasons or whatever reason if you prefer Netherwalk over Soul Rending, you can, but I've always preferred Soul Rending over any of these others. The extra leech is just quite useful. Um here I usually go Cycle of Hatred if it's fortified weeks, and First Blood on Tyrannical weeks. It just gives you that much, a bit more single target damage. So okay, what's your rotation or your priority system looks like for this build? So okay, for Cycle of Hatred momentum, your priority will still be Immolation Aura first, and then Fell Rush with your Unbound Chaos buff, followed by the Hunt if you are in your first strike window, and then I Beam, followed by the Hunt out of first strike, and then you want to the same Blade Dance rules apply. So Blade Dance if you're three or more targets, Death Sweep if you're on two or more targets, and then Chaos Strike or Annihilation to dump excess fury. Um and then if you find yourself in a in a furry staff position, you can vengeful retreat for to generate fury, or you can fell blade to generate fury. But generally, I will not. I don't really use fell blade. You won't really use fell blade as your main furry generator here. It's mostly you can do that, like, but it's most of the time you will find yourself using fell blade after you fell rush or after you vengeful retreat to get back onto your targets. So yeah, for the momentum, it's a bit difficult to put it in like a priority list. So you kind of have to play it out to get a feel for how the momentum spec works. And as a general rule of thumb, you always want to try and fell rush before using any of your big damaging abilities. So like if your I beam is up, you want to fell rush before I beam. So usually it will look like something like fell rush and then fell rush, then fell blade back to the target and I beam, or if you have like you've pulled some furry, maybe you have like 60 or 80 fury, and then you want to dump it all on chaos strikes, you will fell rush, fell blade back to the target, and then dump all your furry in within that momentum window into chaos strikes, stuff like that. So generally you always want to try and keep one fell rush because you have two charges of fell rush, right? You always try and keep one off on cooldown. So there's always one charge which will be regenerating. So whenever your Unbound Chaos is up, you always have that one charge on demand, or whenever you want your I beam or hunt or you want to dump furry, you will always have that one charge up. So you can always get into the momentum window. And yeah. So if you are going on first blood, then you Before I go into the rotation, I'll show you some tricks, sort of tricks you can do with the momentum build, like how to maximize your fair rush. Uh, I mean, how to like charging into walls and stuff so that you don't go too far away from the targets. So let's look at this spec if it's like close to a wall, right? So okay, okay, so your when you fair rush, as much as possible, try to do a sideways fair rush. But I know that can be difficult, and I do really do that most of the time. Most of the time, I just charge through the pack. Like let's say if there's a pack, if you are doing a pack, most of the time I'll just charge through the pack and then turn around and then fell blade back in and then continue my DPS. But it's if you can and if you're good at it, always try to do it sideways. So that you're still like sort of still facing the pack and you might squeeze in one or two auto attacks there. And another thing is if the pack is next to a wall, always try to charge into the wall. Or if it's like in some kind of like lamppost or whatever, just charge into it and it might stop your dash. Um so you don't charge too far away from the pack, so you see, so you can get more uptime on the X or on whatever you're hitting. Another thing you can do on storming weeks actually, if you really want to min max, is to charge into the tornado that comes out from the mobs. So that will stop your your fell rush, and then you fell blade back into the pack. Yeah, usually that's how we do. So that's your fell rush, yeah? And okay, there's no big mobs over here. Um, some bosses have really big hitboxes that when you can fell rush from one end to you can just like fell rush side to side on the boss and you're still within the boss's hitbox. Like that maybe the third boss on Spires, that's one where you can use easily use it. So one thing you can do with uh momentum is that vengeful retreat actually gives you furry. A lot of people forget that. So you can just do a vengeful retreat into the wall. This is one of the best scenarios you can do it. See, it generates super fast. Gives you 80 fury over 10 seconds. Yeah. Uh, Another thing you can do is to vengeful retreat and fell blade back into the target. Yeah. Then you get a lot of furry. Okay, but be careful if you want to do this vengeful retreat fell blade back into the target because okay, let me just wait for. Oh no, why did I do that? Okay, because if you vengeful retreat and fell blade too fast, let me just show you what happens. If you vengeful retreat and fell blade immediately, okay, do you notice what happened? The fell blade didn't bring me back into the target. Okay? So if you vengeful retreat and fell blade, you have to wait like maybe half a second so that you are a bit further away from the target before you fell blade back in. Okay, let me do a side view. See, you vengeful. Yeah. You have to wait for like half a jump when your character is like maybe half a jump away to fell blade back in. Because if you do it too fast, I think there's like some minimum distance that your character has to be away from the target before the fell blade actually dashes you back in. Let me show you again the if you do both immediately. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't bring you back in. Okay. Uh, Another thing you can do with vengeful retreat is with metamorphosis. If you have this macro, so this macro, what it does is when you metamorph, you don't have to click where you want to jump to. It will just immediately metamorph at wherever your cursor is. So what you can do is Vengeful Retreat and use the Metamorphosis to cancel the Vengeful Retreat animation on the spot. So if you look at my cursor, it's over here. So this is where my Metamorph will jump to. So I do a Vengeful Retreat and Metamorph to cancel it. And now I'll get the free regeneration from the Vengeful Retreat. Yeah, so these are the little tricks you can do with the momentum build. It's just to min-max your gameplay basically. And but the more you play, you eventually remember to use Vengeful Retreat, because with this build, you will find that you might run out of furry sometimes, and Fellblade is down and everything is down. You got nothing to give you furry, and then you suddenly remember, oh yeah, I can Vengeful Retreat to get furry. So most of the time, you realize it in those situations where all your cooldown, everything is down, and the only thing you can do is Vengeful Retreat. Yeah, so that's one thing you can do if you find yourself in that situation. Okay, so what will your rotation look like? So again, I'll show you how to do this big burst on your apex. Okay, so what you want to do is click close to the pack, Immolation Aura, Fell Rush through the pack, Fell Blade back in, use the Hunt into a Blade Dance, Fell Rush. Usually you Fell Rush across the whole pack to get more DPS. So when you Fell Rush back out, okay, so when doing AoE damage, right? Even if you're just Fell Rushing to get the momentum buff, try to Fell Rush across the whole pack. It just gives you that bit of extra AoE damage. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn on your Immolation Aura when you creep near the pack. So you activate First Strike on that first ad. So Immolation Aura, Fell Rush through the pack, Fell Blade back in, use the Hunt into a Blade Dance, Fell Rush back out, and then you want to double jump towards the pack and do a I beam, and then from there you Vengeful Retreat, Metamorph into another Blade Dance, I beam. So it should fall into that second Fell Rush window. Um, yeah, okay. It might sound a bit confusing, but I'll show you the rotation in a while. Just waiting for the cooldown on my Metamorph. So, what you want to do? Why do you double jump towards the pack when you channel I beam? Is basically to get close enough to the pack so that when you do the Vengeful Retreat, it actually hits something and gives you the furry regeneration. And yeah, so when doing this build, as a rule of thumb, just try to always Fell Rush before I beam, or Fell Rush before using the Hunt. Or if you're Kyrian, just Fell Rush before dropping your Elysian Decree. Basically, just try to have a Fell Rush for your big damaging abilities, and you shouldn't go wrong with this build. So okay, here's how it goes. There you have. And then from here, just continue your DPS rotation. So just try to Fell Rush before anything big damage. Fell Rush, Fell Blade back in, Death Sweep. If you have nothing to do, you can always just Vengeful Retreat. If you have a wall, do it against the wall. So here you can see my I-beam is up, but I'm waiting for these cooldowns. So you can do this, Blade Dance. So everything falls into that momentum window. Do this, Go rush back in, bleed dance. Yeah. So from here it gets pretty straightforward in a way. You sort of fall into this rhythm of just fair rushing before your big abilities. You see, waiting for the fair rush, double jump back in. So you always want to make it a habit to try to get back into the pack where after your fair rush. So like if you don't the ideal situation of course would be to fair bleed back in after you fair rush out, like so. That's the best. But if you don't have your fair blade up, like here, you can always try to do this. Just double jump towards the pack. Especially if you're channeling, if you want to do an I beam after, it just helps with the. It cuts down on the time that you need to walk. Instead of walking back to the pack, right? You can just double jump. You can just double jump, and even glide if it's too far away. But so like this happens quite often actually. So you fell rush out, double jump, I beam. You can even do it with the hand actually. Okay, so that's it for the momentum rotation. So yeah, that's about it for this guide. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something useful. Good luck with your Mythic Plus pushes. And please feel free to leave any questions you have in the comments below. Or you can catch me live on Twitch. I'll put the link in the description. You can also watch me play and ask me questions live. So see you guys. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.